Hi everyone, how you doing? Welcome back to the Newcastle United training ground. Look at that lovely sunny day at Benton this morning. It's been like this for a few days now. Absolutely freezing, let me tell you. But beautiful sunny day, as you can see by the sun in the background there, and everyone in a very good mood after the last 8 days, the last number of weeks now, because Newcastle absolutely flying right now, aren't they? What an 8 days that was. Victories against Manchester United, Tottenham, and then Arsenal. You won't get that too many times over the years, so drink it up, enjoy it, and I'm sure you guys all are. I've actually forgotten how many games Newcastle are unbeaten now, how many wins in a row. Such is the good form. It feels like the games are just rolling into each other now, and I think it's just quite ironic that after a week like that, Newcastle have got a League Two side at home on Sunday in the FA Cup. So yeah, talk about a tough task for Bromley coming at St James's Park on Sunday. But look, I think Eddie Howe will ring the changes. Just had a chat with him inside. I think as many as maybe 10 changes from the team that took to the field against Arsenal in midweek. He said he's given many of his big name stars a few days off. A few of them stayed down in London and then headed off to see family and whatnot afterwards. So most of them not back in until tomorrow. He said certainly Alexander Isak not back in. He'll get a look at him then, but he's pretty confident that hamstring problem that saw him taken off early against Arsenal isn't too bad, and I think he's likely to be back for the Wolves game next midweek. But I think probably the only starter from the win against Arsenal that will play on Sunday will be Joe Willock. I think he needs minutes. What did he play? About an hour. I think he'll probably play on Sunday. I think the rest of the starting 11 will be completely different. I think Vlachodimos will start in goals. I think Kieran Trippier will probably play at right back, I would imagine. I think Matt Targett at left back, and then I think Fabian Schär will come in because he's missed the last 2 games to get him minutes, and I think he'll probably play alongside Lloyd Kelly at centre back. And then Willock, as I say, I think Longstaff without doubt will come in and start, and I think Louis Miley will start as well because he's been knocking on the door to be back involved. So I think that's a fairly strong midfield, I would suggest. And then I think Osula will start through the middle, with Almiron on the right and Harvey Barnes on the left. So more than enough, you would suspect, to get past Bromley. But of course, Eddie Howe will be well versed and well reminded. I actually asked him about it this morning, but well reminded about that game against Cambridge 3 years ago, when of course League One at the time knocked Newcastle out 1-0 at St James's Park, and he will not want a repeat of that. So I do expect a strong bench on Sunday. I think a lot of the big name players will be on the bench, and they might come on later on in the game just to kind of keep them ticking over. But he did say that Alexander Isak will miss out on the squad altogether, and he'll rest him up to get back in against Wolves next midweek. So yeah, that's the latest on that. But I'm here to talk about Martin Dubravka, as you can probably see by my headline, and it's the big news story that came out of today's press conference. Eddie Howe suggesting that they're talking with Dubravka about coming to some sort of agreement that will see him remain at St James's Park for a bit longer. Now, the reason for that, he's playing so well right now. He's conceded 2 goals in the 9 games since he's been back, or is it 7 games? You'll have to correct me on that one. But he's been great since he came back into the team. He's looked really assured with the ball at his feet. And he's looked significantly better than the Martin Dubravka that ended last season. Now, I know Newcastle are playing a little bit differently now. He's probably got a bit more protection with Tonali there in the number 6 in the holding role, whereas Newcastle looked really open last season when Dubravka was in nets towards the end of the season. But look, without doubt, that protection has given him more confidence. And I think it's really helping him with his display. And it just seems so ironic that this interest from Al-Shabaab over in the Saudi Pro League is coming around just as he's back in the team, and you would have to say, on current form, rivaling Nick Pope for the gloves. I mean, when Nick Pope does come back, and I think we're looking at probably round about the 18th of January, once these little batch of 3 games are out the way, once he does come back in, you would say he's got a fight on his hands to get back into the team. Although we know Pope's a top goalkeeper, not as good with his feet as what Dubravka is, and it would be really difficult for Eddie Howe, I think, now to drop Martin Dubravka, which is why he feels a real need to keep him until the end of the season. Look, I don't think there's any want from Dubravka to sign a new deal. I think Dubravka, I think, listen, he'd love to be part of a Newcastle team that potentially picked up a trophy, and I think it'd be very difficult for him to be out there in Saudi, albeit on big money, watching his former teammates at a club where he spent nearly 8 years in a final at Wembley, potentially lifting a trophy, and he can't do anything about it. You remember, he of course was at Wembley 2 years ago. He was a Manchester United loan player at the time, couldn't play for Newcastle after Nick Pope's injury, and I think that was a really frustrating day for him. He spent the morning shopping, I think, and then went and watched the match, and he would have been playing in that game had he not gone on loan to Manchester United, where of course he ended up being number 2 anyway. So it feels very much like it's all pointing towards redemption time for Martin Dubravka in the final, and he would have to be unbelievably unlucky to see Newcastle get to the final. Newcastle get to the final. He's over in Saudi and he's not part of those celebrations, because he would go down as an absolute club legend. He would go down in Geordie folklore if he was part of that team, even if he was a goalkeeper on the bench. But if he was able to keep his place in the team for that match and Newcastle won the cup, that is something you don't want to miss. I mean, I don't know how much money that is worth, but yes, the offer there from the Saudi Pro League is big. But it sounds from the way Eddie Howe's speaking this morning that they're trying to come to some sort of financial agreement that will satisfy Martin Dubravka to stay until the end of the season. And look, I think the best situation for Dubravka would be if Al Shabab just park it until the summer and they say, look, let's revisit this in the summer, we'll still be interested in you then. Then he gets the big bucks, he gets the big deal from Al Shabab, and he can stay at Newcastle until the end of the season and potentially play in a cup final. Now, obviously, the big question is, will he play in the cup final if and should Newcastle get there, which we all think they will, I think, after the other night's performance against Arsenal. But the big question would be, will Eddie Howe bring back Nick Pope, or will he stick with Martin Dubravka? And that's probably the sort of question that Martin Dubravka is asking Eddie Howe right now, because as much as we think it's the right thing for Dubravka to stay, you can totally understand from his point of view if he turns down a mega bucks move to Al Shabab, remains, says he'll stay until the end of the season, and then finds himself on the bench in the final, warming the bench and not playing. You can understand there'll be a real frustration from his side. So I think for Eddie Howe, they're appealing to Dubravka's good nature. He's very much a team player. Eddie Howe made that clear this morning. He said he's a great guy to have around the place, an ultimate professional, and he's a real club man. So will he do that? Will he agree to stay knowing that there's a chance he might not play in that game? I suppose for Dubravka, he just needs to take a chance in it one way or the other. But the talks that they're having right now aren't so much of a new contract. I think it's probably a little sweetener to Dubravka to say to him, look, stay until the summer. There's whatever it is, a couple of £1 million, to say no to Al Shabab, and hopefully for him that deal will remain in the summer. So let's see what happens on that front. But Eddie Howe said this morning it's an absolute priority of his to get this sorted out sooner rather than later, because I think he feels it's just casting a little bit of a cloud over things. And of course, it's going to be in the back of Dubravka's mind when he's playing. If he gets injured, is that going to potentially cost him a move? But if Newcastle are able to, give him an assurance that he's going to potentially be involved in the game, or alternatively give him some kind of financial agreement, some kind of sweetener that would keep him happy until the summer, that might be the best way to go about things. But look, without doubt, it's a very, very delicate situation, and it's so typical that it's the moment Dubravka gets back in the team, because if this move had come about this time last year or in the summer, I don't think too many people would have complained, and they probably would have been quite content to see Dubravka go, given the fact that Newcastle have got a number of other goalkeepers. But look, I don't think Howe would trust Vlachodimos or Ruddy or Gillespie to play in a cup final, and I think if Dubravka was gone, it would leave them very, very light on the ground and open to a real issue, which is what we saw 2 years ago when Loris Karius had to play in goals after Nick Pope was suspended and Dubravka was loaned out. So he does not want a repeat of that situation, and I think allowing Dubravka to go now would be leaving yourself open to that situation occurring one more time. So that was the news from this morning. Eddie Howe saying that they were in talks continue, and that they're hoping to come to some sort of resolution. It sounded fairly positive, I have to say. On top of that, some good news regarding Callum Wilson. Eddie Howe says he hopes he'll be back at the beginning of February. So wow, you could have Callum Wilson and Martin Dubravka in a Newcastle United team or squad for a cup final just around the corner. Who'd have thought that recently? So good news on Callum Wilson. He said the injury was worse than they thought when they had a scan, but he says he's in, he's back. He thinks he's back on the grass today, and he's hoping to have him back in for the beginning of February. So that's 3 weeks away. So that's good news. I think as well, just to get him back and sort of lessen the load a little bit on Alexander Isak, even just to come off the bench in games, it would just take some of the pressure off of Alexander Isak at the moment. So that was another good news that's another news line from today's press conference, which is a good one.